I'm always very careful how I talk about my mental health, so I don't go into my mental health in detail. But often I'm very well, and then I have periods where I'm not very well. And one of the first periods where I wasn't very well, in fact, the first period where I wasn't very well, was actually coincided with bank charges that we talked about earlier. And I had 3 people in a week call me a god. They kept going on the tube. Oh, you're a god to me. I do everything you say. I've got everything back from bank charges. And it broke me. This is when you talk about the compliments, but it absolutely broke me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. They kept saying, you're a god. I do whatever you say. I couldn't cope with it. And I know it sounds, it's a lot of pressure to throw on somebody. These people you've never met, you know nothing about, and I want to do the right thing. And you're going, but you're not even telling me I read everything and I made my decision. You're just telling me I'd do it. And I'm always about empowering. In my head, I try and empower people to give them the information and guidance to make the right decision. But I don't want to make that decision for them. The pandemic was very difficult. And coming out in the cost of living crisis, they were very difficult for that reason. The number of people, the phrases, killer phrases, I rely on you. I do everything you say. I find it, I hope there's not an arrogance in me saying it, but I find that so difficult. And then I go through everything I've done wrong in my life, because I'm a human being. I've done lots of things wrong. But lots of things I feel guilty about. I remember the person I was really shitty to at university, right? And I just think, oh God, that was a horrible thing I did to that person. I remember this and that. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to start talking about it. And everyone, so the more people put you up on a pedestal, the more you think, oh God, they're just going to not, something's going to happen that breaks that. And I don't want to break that trust, because what I do, I think, is really important. And I would, I wish. And the bigger I've got, the more difficult that is. So there is an incredible pressure, and I find it, struggle to difficult with it is an under-exaggeration. I can't deal with it at times.
So would you share with us, though, because I think there's lots of people listening to this will feel pressure in different guises, however it shows up. Would you tell us some of the methods you have learned of coping under pressure?
I've been asked that question before, and honestly, no, I won't, because I'm crap at it. Right, and I don't want anybody to learn from me. I do what I can.
Well, what about your biggest mistakes then?
Look, I try and learn the breathing stuff. I'm not very. I try my breathing. I can't do meditation. Right, sleeping is quite tough. All of those things. I try and talk myself through it. I've had therapy. I've done all of those things. But when it's bad, it's bad. My main coping mechanisms: huge amounts of exercise, lots of walking on top of the exercise. Always be in a book. That's one of my big rules. So for me, it has to be, I only have 2 types of books. It must be either science fiction or fantasy, or historic fiction. It cannot be anything that could trigger thoughts about my world, and I must always be in a book. What I mean by that is, if I'm struggling and I'm stressed, I can't start a book. So my rule is, at any one time, I must be in a book that I'm enjoying, because then if I'm struggling and stressed, I can stay in it. So whenever I finish a book, I always get into another book, absolutely as a priority. So I'm always in the middle of a book. That's one of the few tips that works. And find distraction, find anything that can take your brain away. I don't care if it's playing a game on your phone, which is something I do. I'll find a game that will buzz your brain, but distraction is very important. But the problem with that is that's personal to what I deal with. Some people have depression. I don't have depression. Mine is anxiety-based. I have anxiety. And we all need to find our own different things. I've been to universities and I've done talks on how to be successful. And one of the, I say there are 4 things. Talent, but I think a lot more people have talent than they know. Hard work, and all those people who say, oh, I only do 4 hours a day and I've been really successful. I just think it's bullshit. I think most people who are really successful work really hard. I spent a decade working 90 hours a week. That was just what I did. That's how I got here. When I was building the website myself, that was what I was doing. Focus, I think, is incredibly important. Laser-like focus. You can't be the best at everything. Try and be the best at one thing. And then the final one I say, which is absolutely, unquestionably the most important one: luck. And anyone tells you there isn't an element in luck in what they do is just lying to you. There are, and there's all the harder I work, the luckier I get. No, well, it's not true. There are lots of incredibly hardworking, talented, focused people who have not been successful. And that's another reason for the whole pay it back, because I'm aware I've been incredibly lucky. But the tip that I need to say within all that is, do you really want to be that successful? Because there's a cost to it. There's a cost to pushing as hard as I've pushed and as hard as other people have pushed. And I look at some of my incredibly bright contemporaries from university who haven't on paper been as successful as I have. And who perhaps, everybody, when we were leaving, I was at the LSE, there were lots of people who were really driven there. Everyone as we were leaving thought they really wanted to be successful. And there were many who within probably 3 or 4 years suddenly went, actually, I can make a good income and I can work 9 to 5 and get a good income and I can have a nice life afterwards. And that's pretty good for me. I'm not sure I want to push it. And I was there going, zone, zone, zone. I think in balance at the age of 51, if I were to compare myself to some of them, I think if you add up the total happiness that each of them have had, they're ahead on the happiness score. So I think people need to, how hard do you want to push? How much do you really want to be the number one in what you do on the big picture? Most people can't be, so a lot of people will fail. And even if you do get it, I'm sure there's some people you'll have met who've had great journeys to top level success and high performance and haven't had to pay for it. But I've certainly paid for it in quite a lot of ways. In locking yourself away doing spreadsheets for many hours when other people weren't, missing out on social life, missing out on interactions with family, certainly my 30s in the drive stage of my career, and the impact it's had on my mental health with the responsibility that's come with it. I'm not asking anyone to feel sorry for me. I just think it's a choice thing.
I also think it's a really important thing to talk about, because we're a podcast that tries to peel back the layers to reveal the truth. There are plenty of other podcasts and social media platforms telling young people, work 24 hours a day, don't take a break, be relentless, have the hustle, do something on the side, push yourself to the limit, work up, be the hardest worker in the room. And I think it never takes into account luck. And then it leaves us in a position where there are people saying, well, I've done all those things and I still haven't achieved anything. And then it actually leaves people feeling far worse than feeling better. It's not a form of empowerment to tell everyone else that it worked for me. It's a form of empowerment, as you're saying, to say that actually this comes at a price.
It does. And I can only talk from my experience. I'm not saying it will be that way for everyone. I'm sure there are some people who've made that path through. But most people I meet who've been successful have had real sacrifice for doing it. And actually, you need to just make that choice of whether that's right for you. And happiness, I don't think there's enough focus on happiness as a form of success.